Welcome back to the Clack Shack. And tonight I got a project I've been working on. I've been wanting to do this for a while and I could never find the right materials. I've been to several shops and so forth. But what I was wanting was, I was wanting to be able to make my own stamp. And the long story behind that is that when I got the XTool originally, it was to put my markings on woodworking projects that I had done. And it worked for that. I used it for that for quite a while, but it's got to the point now to where the XTool is, while I'm building woodworking projects, I've usually got something cutting on the XTool or engraving tumblers or whatever, and I don't want to shut the XTool down to put my logo underneath the table or on a shelf or on a cutting board or whatever the case may be. And so I catch myself in a dilemma. Do I buy two XTools and have one for that and one for logos, or what? And to be honest with you, if I buy another XTool, it'll be to cut more pieces because I stay backed up as it is. And so what I want to do is I want to be able to have a quick way that I can just, stamp a logo on some stuff. I cut a lot of things out of small cedar and stuff, and this would actually work better than what I normally would do. So I finally found the materials, I finally found the settings, I got everything working, and so that's going to be the topic of today's video. So if you'll stick around for a minute, I'm going to go through with what I found out. All right, I'm going to start by showing you how this thing's constructed somewhat. And what I did is, this is more or less just a visual aid for myself so that when I'm stamping something, I know the orientation of the logo, and it's right the opposite of the logo itself. Now, before we get started, I want to emphasize to you, in order to make this work, you have to set this as a mirror image. If you don't, it's going to print backwards. Here's the material that I wound up getting, and before anybody gets too concerned, I will drop a link to it in the description, because like I said, I have tried all kinds of materials, couldn't find anything that would work, and finally I found this little piece here, and it works. Now I will tell you, however, I don't know what this side is made out of. This last little layer right here, and I might could have put like 5 or 6 more rotations in there and might could have cut all the way through it, but this stuff is tough when it comes to cutting. So, but what I did is I got my settings to where all I had to do was take a utility knife and cut it right there, and there was enough of a perforation in it that I was able to just pull it gently, and it tore out of the rest of it without having to cut it completely in half. I was a little worried to crank the power up too much, afraid I might start a fire, because I had never used this before. I did 4 small ones. I did 3 small test burns. None of those were deep enough. It just didn't look right. And so I kept playing with the settings, and finally on this 4th one right here, I finally got it to where I was satisfied with the results. But this is the material that comes in like an 8.5 by 11 sheet, which is, same as a sheet of notebook paper and sheet of copy paper. So I got that, which luckily I'm through making all the stamps I need to make for myself. So I got the rest of this to use to make for other people when they see this on my Facebook page and start calling me going, hey, I got to have 2 of those or 1 of those or whatever. But that's the material that I used. I made 2 different sizes, and of course I'm using one of my cool little boxes here to store them in, because they do have ink on them. And the epoxy isn't completely dry on these yet, but it's tacky enough that it's not going anywhere. I tried wood glue. I tried several different adhesives to try to get this thing to stay to a piece of wood. I will tell you that before you try to use this stuff and glue it to something, I strongly recommend taking some rubbing alcohol and just giving it a really good bath, because I don't know if there's an oil on the outside of it or what, but I couldn't get it to stick to nothing until I cleaned it with alcohol really good. And then I had to use some Gorilla epoxy here, the 2-part little squeeze syringe, and just kind of put it on the part and mix it together, and it worked. So they're staying now. Hopefully they'll continue to stay. But I made 2 different sizes, and then I got me an ink pad too. I bought it from Amazon, same as I got the other. And you just, works just like a regular stamp. You ink it up and press it, And there you go. There's your logo. It works pretty well. I have found some woods tend to bleed with this ink a little bit, so I'm gonna have to work around that because I don't want it looking smudged. But that's the small stamp, and then of course I've got my larger one. And like I said, I did laser engrave the back of it so I could tell which orientation to hold it when I'm stamping with it. But then you know, just go stamp. If you kind of press the whole thing, it works like 2 or 3 stamps without having to, you know, re-squish it into the ink. And if you press it really hard on notebook paper, it actually turns out really, really well. It does have that stamp appearance where sometimes you'll have those little marks where you didn't quite get enough, you know, you didn't get quite enough ink on there. But I'm happy with the results. I don't know which one I'll use more. This one is for my smaller items that I make. If you're familiar with my Facebook page, you may have seen some of the little stakes that I make that have different logos on them for refrigerator magnets or whatnot, or Christmas ornaments. This is going to work great for them because when I'm cutting those out, I'll cut 5 or 6 out at a time and then just remove the sheet, set it over here, go back in with another sheet, cut 5 or 6 more, and it's like an assembly line. And so this is going to eliminate me, you know, not putting my logo on the back because I didn't want to shut my laser down and flip them over and spend twice as much time making a piece that, because a lot of those little pieces, you know, I'm selling them to people who are reselling them with their logo on them. And so I'm only making $3 a piece off those things. So if I have to do a 10-minute burn or, you know, 5-minute burn on this side and then flip it over and it takes me 5 minutes to do my logo, I am doubling the time I spent on that piece for $3. And so this is going to allow me to be able to burn them, sand them, bring them over, just lay them upside down and go down the line and stamp them and be done. I have my logo on them because the customer doesn't care if my logo is stamped or if my logo is burned. You see on my channel, I get it in 4x8 sheets and I rip it down with my saws and get it to 16x16s. Well, the one thing that I have seen with it is it does have a tendency when you stamp it, if you stamp it heavy, it wants to bleed a little bit. And what I mean by bleed is the ink will kind of run the grain on some woods. The poplar plywood, it is not so bad. It takes it a minute to be able to see the bleeding. So we'll let that sit and I'll show it to you again. But you can see right in there, you can see little tiny, where it's running those wood fibers and it'll kind of make it blurry. We'll go ahead and stamp it and show you. And as you can see, that is crisp. I mean, that is a good looking stamp right there. But unless this is an unusual piece of cedar, in just a few minutes, you're gonna start seeing it bleed out from the grain and it's gonna start, the black is gonna start going in towards each other. So it's gonna, the bleeding is gonna run the grain, by the way. So for the ones of y'all that don't know that. And like I said, with the smaller one, it's the same, slippery. It's the same effect. I am gonna try to do this one lightly so that I can show the difference as far as it not bleeding over, because I didn't put a whole lot of ink on that one. So that one should soak up the ink with minimal bleeding. I'm not gonna mess up my nice little piece of wood here, so we'll just make sure we stick with this one for our example for the oak. But as you can see, the oak's really not bleeding that bad. I mean, it's got a little, I don't know if you can tell it in the camera, but it's real tiny bleeding there going on. But check the check out the poplar. The poplar is not doing too well with the bleeding on the small print. And same thing with these. So that's the downside that I have found. But like I said, for wood, depending on how intricate your design is and the type of wood that it is, it's not gonna, you may not have the desired effect that you want. For paper, I mean, it is doing good. I'm gonna keep playing around with this, and I may try to order a couple more different inks. This one claimed to work good on wood, but after seeing the bleeding, I'm not real sure that they meant unfinished wood. It may work if you had a piece of wood that had some sealer on it or something to keep it from absorbing the ink, it would probably work better. But like I say, the oak with the tight grain, see, it's still not bleeding bad. The small one kind of had a little issue with the bleeding, and this cedar's actually doing surprisingly well. So, I mean, it sits there long enough. But like I said, the workaround to that is, though, I have found the workaround is to ink it and just like stamp something that you're not really, it's not your end product, and then stamp again once it doesn't have as much ink on it, and the bleedings, it'll still stain it, but the bleeding's going to be substantially less. So that's a workaround. That's probably what I'm going to do until I can come up with a little bit better ink, is I'm going to just have me a piece of wood or something there to where when I ink it up real good, I can just lightly stamp it and then move on to my project. And that way I get the excess ink off of the stamp and I get that a little bit fainter stamp so it won't bleed as bad. So that's going to be my workaround until I come up with an alternative. And who knows, I may, after doing that for a little while, I may decide I like this, because the ink pad was relatively cheap. So you don't want to spend any more money than you have to on this stuff. But like I said, guys, it works fairly well. I am pleased with the results for what I've got in this setup, and I can actually make a bunch more of these stamps using that. And if you know people who do crafts where they're working with paper, like, you know, cards, Christmas cards and stuff like that, this would be really really neat for that application. But the wood, like I said, there's a little bit of a weak spot here. The lighter that you make the stamp on the wood, the better the clarity you're gonna have. You can see the ones that are where I went sparingly with the ink, it looks better. Too much ink is gonna cause this bleeding. All right, guys, I'm gonna go over my settings now. Like I said, I'm running a 10-watt D1, and I do not have the air assist or anything like that. I do have the air assist ordered, as well as a honeycomb, because I'm having some problems with my jig that I use. Some folks have got the honeycomb and are having to make adjustments. So I'm gonna you know, get me a honeycomb and try to work the bugs out of that for them. And I'm gonna go ahead and get XTool's air assist just to try it out and see if it works. But the settings that I'm running on my 10-watt XTool D1 for the feel, which the feel is basically the recess between the parts that are gonna print. The feel, I'm running a 50 speed of 50 millimeters per second and power output of 100. I've got it set to a constant power output. I'm running light burn, and the line, which is the cut, to attempt to try to cut it out. Like I said, it won't cut it all the way out, not with these settings, but it gets it close enough that you can, you know, take a pair of scissors or whatever and get it started, and then just it'll actually tear that last little piece that's holding. I'm running my typical speed for my other woods and stuff. I'm running a 7 millimeters per second, 100% power, and I tried up to 6 passes on this stuff and it wouldn't go through. So that last little bit wanted to hold in there. So anywhere from 4 to 6 works, because that's what I use on the others. But I went ahead and went with a 6 just to make sure there was that much less material that I had to tear, and that one actually tore out a little easier than the other ones did. So I would probably go ahead and stick with the 6 pass counts on the cutout for the cut. On the feel, I actually ran the feel for 3 passes. The first couple of versions I did it 1 pass, and then I turned the heat up and tried to do it again, but I didn't like the way the heat was affecting the rubber. So I backed the heat back down, and the second one that I did, or the third one that I did it at 50 speed and 100% output, and it worked pretty decent, but the valleys weren't deep enough to keep it from trying to print, you know, what was behind it. So I wound up going with a 3 pass count on the recess for the stamp itself. Now you may want to try 4, and I may very well, next time I do it, try 4 to try to get a deeper recess to keep, when you stamp it, to keep from the back part from actually interfering with the stamp. But from the results I'm seeing right now, I'm pleased with what I've got. But if I do tear one of them up and have to redo it, I may go with a 4 pass on the actual recessing of the logo. So those are my settings. Like I said, no professional here, but that's what I did, and I got the results that you saw in the video. So if you get the products I got and you use the settings I got, then you should get the results I got, or at least very close, as long as the material that you get is the same batch, I guess. It's not as hard or anything like that. I will tell you this material is very messy. Well, when you're engraving it, it will leave a white powdery substance in your air outlets. So just be prepared for that. But that's what I got to do it. And if you want to try it, like I said, feel free. I'm going to drop the links to everything that I used in the description, so you hadn't got to go looking for it. This one I just wanted to kind of concentrate on, can you make a rubber stamp with the XTool D1 and how well does it work? And so that was the topics that I was trying to cover, and hopefully we cover those thorough enough, and it'll benefit you. And if you've been wanting to do a stamp, or if you've got a need for a stamp, or just want to see if you can do it, then maybe this will help you get there a little more effectively. So thanks, and hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.